Exposed. 3 sinister true stories of haunted end-of-summer terrors that will haunt you forever. The sun dipped below the horizon of lakeside estates, casting long shadows that seemed to stretch and crawl, hungry for secrets. The Thompson family, Sarah, Mark, Mia, and Ethan, had painted their lives in smiles and normalcy. Yet that picture-perfect image was dissolving quicker than a summer sunset. It all began when they discovered the first letter on their porch, a neatly folded sheet tauntingly warning, "Stay inside after dark." Initially, they laughed it off. Who could possibly be serious? A prank from a bored neighbor, maybe. But laughter turned into unease as the first night crept in, bringing with it an enveloping darkness alive with whispered secrets. Days passed, and the letters continued, each one filled with a growing sense of dread that tightened around Sarah's heart like a vice. The flickering porch light couldn't disguise the gnawing fear. Was someone watching them? Mia and Ethan clung to her as shadows danced in the corners of her vision. And nights grew longer, stretching into hours filled with distant laughter that sounded almost wrong. But Sarah was torn. "It's just a joke," Mark repeated, but his voice lacked conviction. "Oh, and don't forget," she thought, trying to shake off the feeling that something was very, very wrong. Eerie happenings turned the summer lullaby into a dark elegy. Frantic whispers echoed as she stifled the knot in her throat. Out of the corner of her eye, there were shapes flickering behind the trees. Were there figures darting just beyond the light? Heart racing, Sarah would dart glances at Tom, the neighbor who always wore a knowing grin. His eyes, however, never quite matched a smile. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Matthew from the diner had mentioned the abandoned school nearby, a place where children had vanished, leaving behind echoes of laughter that morphed into unnerving cries at dusk. The stories that once seemed like campfire fodder now gnawed at her sanity late at night. With the shadows seeping uninvited into their home, as autumn's chill crept into Ohio's air, Sarah paced, the rhythm of her breathing quickening with the phantom heartbeat echoing around her. Each creak of the floorboards, every rustle outside brought her stomach into knots. Then, late one evening came a new sound: soft laughter, childlike and sweet. It drifted from the empty schoolyard as if inviting them in. Fear turned liquid, pooling in her veins. The Thompsons lived in a safe suburb, or so they believed. Summer slipped away, but not without leaving its malevolent mark. The last letter was slipped under their door, filled with cryptic warnings that twisted her insides and sent chills racing down her spine. She gazed into the thick darkness, gripping Ethan tighter and unable to shake the feeling that the real horror didn't come from mere shadows. No, it sat right at their dinner table, masked with friendly smiles, lurking far too close for comfort. Her eyes widened with revelation. They were surrounded. There were no safe havens left. Dread had set its roots deep within them. How much longer could they endure this? With trembling hands, Sarah picked up the ominous note, breath hitching as her heart thundered in her chest. "You're not safe," it read, taunting her sanity. The sound of whispered secrets began anew, curling around her mind like smoke, leaving only one terrifying question lingering in the air: who or what was truly stalking them? The next day arrived with an oppressive weight, the sky a sickly shade of gray, clouds lingering overhead like a foreboding omen. Sarah's heart felt heavy, the morning's light unable to shake the clinging dread that enveloped their home. Ethan had taken to sleeping with a stuffed bear, a poor excuse for a guard against whatever nightmares lurked outside. Mia busied herself with drawings, but her colors were muted, as if she too sensed the approaching darkness that grew bolder by the hour. Mark's demeanor was decidedly tense at breakfast. No one spoke about the letter, yet the unspoken words hung thick in the air. It was as if acknowledging their fear would somehow make it real. Instead, the family sat together in silence, pushing their food around their plates, the clink of cutlery resonating like a death knell. Later, against her better judgment, Sarah resolved to confront their fears head-on. "We should check out that school," she said, her voice trembling but urgent. "We need to know what's out there." Mark hesitated, but after a moment, the firmness in her tone persuaded him. Fine, but we stay as a group. Everyone, together. The sun's feeble rays started to vanish as they approached the abandoned brick building. The playground was rusted, swings creaking eerily in the slight breeze, a testament to happier days lost in memory. With every step, the air thickened, and the memories of laughter twisted into something sinister. Mia clung to Sarah's side, her small hand trembling. "Mom, can we go home?" "Just a little further, sweetheart," Sarah whispered, trying to soothe her, but feeling the weight of their surroundings crush her resolve. Mark walked ahead, searching for anything familiar, his back a tense line. They reached a doorway partially blocked by overgrown weeds, the darkness within yawning wide. Were those whispers echoing through the schoolyard? To her horror, Sarah could see faint shapes through broken windows. Shadows seemed to flit just out of sight. "I don't like this," Ethan said, his voice shrill. "It's too quiet. Let us just look inside," Mark suggested. His tone, less confident than intended, rang false. He opened the door cautiously, the creak almost like a scream, inviting yet warning. A gust of cold air rushed out, and they shivered as if it carried the chill of the void inside. Inside, the walls bore graffiti, remnants of long-forgotten screams seemed to seep from every crack. Dust coated the floor like forgotten secrets. As they walked deeper in, the laughter returned, that same sweet, echoing sound that twisted the heart. "Stay close," Sarah ordered, her voice unsteady. They moved through dimly lit hallways, where shadows flickered and danced as if alive. Windows were boarded up, trapping the dark inside. The deeper they went, the more Sarah struggled to breathe, terror welling up as the atmosphere thickened around them. Then, amidst the disarray of old desks and forgotten memories, they stumbled upon something chilling: dolls lined up on a shelf, their gazes hollow yet strangely watchful. One doll, a frayed-haired, porcelain-faced girl, seemed to hold a sinister promise in her painted smile. "What is this?" "They're creepy," Ethan murmured, clutching tightly to Mia. Before Sarah could respond, a loud crash echoed from the back of the building. Fear ignited her heart, and adrenaline surged through her veins. "Mark," she shouted, but her voice barely rose above the disquieting laughter that swirled around them, turning their fear into a viscous fog. Then came the whisper again, more insistent, wrapping around Sarah's mind. "Help us find us," she spun around, panic flooding her senses. "We need to leave. Now." As they turned back toward the door, it slammed shut with an ominous thud that reverberated through her very core. The laughter morphed into a cacophony of screams, echoing off the walls as shadows surged forth. The Thompsons stood frozen, hearts racing, eyes wide with terror. What had they awakened? The only certainty that remained was the fragile thread of hope that now unfurled into a limitless abyss of dread. Suddenly, Mia pointed into the darkness. The flicker of a figure just at the edge of the shadows. Was someone watching them? Or was something far worse stirring in the depths of the school, waiting for its moment to strike? The shadows writhed and pulsed like dark ink spilling across the walls, creeping toward the Thompsons with an insatiable hunger. Sarah's breath quickened. She could hardly catch the air, every inhale feeling like a punishment. "Please," she pleaded, her voice barely more than a whisper. "We need to get out." As if summoned by her urgency, the flickering figure stepped forward into the dim light. It was small, no taller than Mia. Its gaunt face emerged from the shadows, eyes like hollow voids, mouth twisted in a smirk that chilled Sarah to the bone. "Help us," it echoed, its voice a haunting reverberation that sank deep into her gut. Ethan squeezed Mia's hand so tightly that she winced. "Mom, what is that?" I don't know." Sarah felt her vision blur. There was no escape. They were trapped, at the mercy of whatever presence loomed within this wretched place. Mark stepped forward, instinctively shielding his family. "Who are you?" he demanded, his voice trying to hold on to authority, but trembling, betraying his fear. The small figure tilted its head, the smile widening grotesquely. "Play with us," it crooned, and with that, the laughter returned, louder this time, vibrating through the very bones of the building. The sound echoed against cracked tiles and shattered windows, sending a chill down Sarah's spine. From behind the figure, more shapes emerged, their faces pale and twisted with longing. They wore clothes that looked like they belonged to children from another time, tattered dresses and ripped trousers, hair tangled and wild. They were an army of specters, their ghoulish forms reaching out as though craving the warmth of the living. Sarah's heart raced. No, no, no. She grabbed Ethan and Mia, pushing them behind her, adrenaline coursing through her veins. Mark turned, looking for a way out, but the entire space seemed alive, writhing to trap them. Ride the swings with us, a boy shouted, pointing toward the playground outside, where the rusted swings creaked in harmony with the laughter. The suggestion sent shivers through the family. This was no innocent game. Mia tugged at Sarah's sleeve, eyes wide with fear. Mom, I'm scared. I know, baby. Hold on tight. Panic surged in her as she looked around, seeking an exit, anything to escape the twisted joy surrounding them. Mark gripped the door handle, his knuckles turning white. It's locked, he muttered, his voice cracking. It won't budge. The playful cries morphed into growls. Shadows seemed to bend toward them, solidifying into faces of anguish and desperation. Join us, they shrieked, their voices rising like a storm, drowning out the laughter. Don't leave. The dolls on the shelf began to vibrate, eyes rolling back in their sockets, their painted smiles stretching impossibly wide. The very air felt electric, a thrumming resonance that made Sarah's skin crawl. Glancing around frantically, she noticed a faint light flickering at the end of the hall. There, she yelled, pointing frantically. We can make it. Hand in hand, the Thompsons darted towards the distant glow, the darkness hissing angrily, shadows clawing at their ankles as they ran. The tormenting laughter pressed behind them, like a living thing chasing, wanting to drag them back. Just when they reached the threshold of light, it flickered and dimmed. In that heartbeat of hesitance, a chilling voice whispered from the darkness. You can't escape, not yet. They hurled themselves through the threshold into the unknown, but the moment they crossed, the light vanished completely, plunging them into an abyss of silence. All around them was darkness, and the only sound left was the echo of their own terrified breaths. What had they just escaped? Or had they merely stepped into something far worse? Then, in the pitch black, a new sound began, a soft, insistent whisper rising above their panicked gasps. Help us! What had they awakened? What awaited them in this new realm of terror? The darkness wrapped around the Thompsons like a heavy blanket, smothering every ounce of hope they had left. The whispering grew louder, circling them, crashing over them like waves, each syllable laced with despair. Help us, where are we? Ethan's voice trembled as he pressed into his mother. Sarah wanted to answer, to reassure him, but the words died in her throat. The silence felt thick, almost tangible, a heavy weight pressing down on them. They stood paralyzed, surrounded by the shadows. Suddenly, a flicker broke through the blackness. It was barely a spark, but it was enough to ignite something inside her, a desperate urge to fight, to flee. We need to move, she blurted, shoving forward into the unknown. With each step, the ground beneath them felt uneven, shifting like it was alive. A low rumble rolled through the air. The whispers turned into agonized wails. Mark strained to keep the family together, but the shadows surged and swirled, as if they had minds of their own, eager to pull them apart. Stay close, he hissed, holding Mia's hand firmly while casting frantic glances into the mess of dark. The faint light persisted ahead, beckoning them like a beacon. They struggled toward it, the walls bending and warping around them, losing all sense of direction. The whispers turned into a screech, a cacophony of tormented souls that filled the air. It threatened to rip them apart. Run, Sarah screamed, propelling her family forward. But the shadows lunged. Shadows they could barely see began to form into shapes. Some were children, their hollow eyes reflecting pure anguish. Others loomed larger, figures of menacing size, their distorted faces twisting in anger. Then, an overwhelming scent filled the air. It was a rancid, burning sweet smell, like decaying fruit. Sarah clamped her hand over her mouth, gagging in revulsion. Ethan, hold your breath, she shouted, choking back her own gag reflex. Just as they neared the flicker of light, another voice joined the fray, breaking through the chaos. Play with us, it said, sweet and sickly. The small lucent figure, now more distinct, materialized ahead. Its smirk twisted further, revealing jagged teeth. Join the game. Mark lurched forward, heart pounding. "We don't want to play," he shouted, but the words fell like stones in the choking air. "Join us," they echoed, the children's voices melding with phantom cries, resonating deep within his chest. They were everywhere now, pressing in, their cold breath icy against his skin. The shadows slithered around their legs, an ever-tightening noose. Sarah's fraught gaze darted between the flicker of light and the room full of dark desires. "Keep going. We can't stop." But with each step they took forward, it felt like the ground beneath them began to give way. The light pulsed and faded, leaving behind a swirling abyss of despair. As they reached for the last vestiges of light, everything erupted into chaos. The specters shrieked, their wails transforming into an ear-splitting roar. "Let us in," a dozen voices cried, their hands reaching out, their grasp like ice. In a final act of desperation, Sarah screamed, "Fight it! We are stronger." But the shadows pushed back, clawing at their flesh, pulling at their clothes. Suddenly, just as they were about to be engulfed, a blinding light flared from somewhere deep within the darkness. It was an explosion of flash that illuminated the hollow eyes, the clawing hands, the twisted faces, and then silence. The Thompsons staggered, disoriented by the sudden disappearance of noise. They stood alone in a stark, white void, the whispers fading away like a bad memory. The ground beneath them felt flat and unyielding, and miraculously, they were together. But just as they breathed a sigh of relief, the flicker of the light pulsed again. It revealed a doorway, standing ajar at the far end. An eerie glow leaked from the edges. Mark took a cautious step forward. What now? A creeping dread curled in Sarah's gut. What lay beyond that door? What had they escaped? Only to be led to another peril? As if in answer, a low voice slithered through the air. "You're not done, yet come play." A shiver ran through her as they collectively hesitated, fear flooding their minds once more. What had they left behind, and what darkness awaited them beyond that threshold? Mark glanced at Sarah, their eyes locked in a wordless conversation. Should they take the risk? The door loomed larger and more menacing with each heartbeat, its soft glow pulsing as if it had a life of its own. He stepped closer, vowing to protect his family at all costs. "We have to find out what's on the other side." If there's a way out, the others exchanged nervous glances, Ethan squeezing Mia's hand tightly, their small bodies trembling. "What if it's worse?" Mia whispered, her voice barely audible above the ominous silence. "Nothing can be worse than what we just went through," Sarah countered, her voice steadier than she felt. But as she spoke, doubts gnawed at her. What if it truly was worse? They'd already faced horrors unimaginable, and yet here they were, on the cusp of something new. Taking a deep breath, Mark reached for the door handle. It was ice cold to the touch, sending a jolt of panic through him. "On three," he muttered, glancing back at his family. Ethan nodded, his large eyes wide with fear. 1, 2, 3. Mark flung the door open. The light that spilled out was blinding, forcing them to shield their eyes. They stumbled forward into the room, half expecting to find a place of solace. Instead, they were met by an expansive hall, adorned with grotesque murals depicting twisted scenes of despair and madness. "Get back!" Sarah shouted as she swept her arms around Ethan and Mia, shielding them from the imagery. The walls pulsed, a sickly sheen of shadows creeping from every corner, creeping towards them as if alive. "Wait," Mark breathed, his voice thick with dread as he stepped further inside. The etched figures appeared to be watching, their hollow eyes shifting, witnessing the family with an eerie malevolence. "What is happening?" Ethan cried, tugging at Sarah's sleeve, eyes darting wildly. Sarah bit her lip, feeling the suffocating weight of the shifting shadows around them. "I don't know. Just stay close." The door slammed behind them with an echoing finality, and the light dimmed, dropping them back into near darkness. The atmosphere thickened, swirling chaos tightening around them. "Playtime," the whisper-threaded voice cooed again, echoing from the far end of the hall. It wasn't just in their heads. The sound reverberated off the walls, set to an unsettling rhythm. Mark's gut dropped. "We should run," he muttered, but the oppressive air seemed to drag them back, clasping at their very essence. "No, we need to stand our ground," Sarah insisted, scanning the grotesque images. The depicted figures seemed to writhe, almost alive, and she could feel their actions resonate within her. They're a part of this. Mia's whimper cut through the tension. Mom, what's that? She pointed shakily to the far wall, where the shadows writhed, coalescing into a larger form, forming someone filled with anguish. What do you want? Mark shouted, his voice quavering. We're not here to play. But the response was a hollow laugh, ringing through the hall like a broken chime. The figures on the walls began shifting, their hands clawing at the air as if reaching for them, and the voice morphed into a cacophony of laughter and cries. Panic seized Sarah, her heart raced. We need to find a way out. This is a trap. Look. Mark pointed toward a flicker at the far end of the hall, a doorway now glowing even brighter, a drastic contrast to the deepening shadows. There. A way out. But before they could move, the room shuddered. The walls twisted, and the shadows spoke with a new intensity. Stay and play. Forever a frigid chill swept over them, wrapping around their throats, squeezing the air from their lungs. Every instinct screamed to run, to escape this place of horror. But as they stepped toward the light, the very darkness they had fought so hard against surged forward, blocking their path. Together, Mark shouted, grabbing Sarah's hand tightly. A surge of determination coursed through them. They wouldn't be lost again. The flicker of the promised escape called to them once more, but the shadows lunged. With a force more powerful than terror, they felt themselves pulled back, caught between the flickering light and the darkness' icy grasp. Would they escape this time, or would they succumb to the whispering depths below? Just as the shadows closed in, a piercing scream cut through the air. It wasn't theirs. A figure stepped from the darkness, its eyes glowing with a feral hunger. I'll take your place. The darkness pulsated, growing denser as the door flickered uncertainly behind them. What were they about to lose, and who else would come to play? As the figure emerged, it blurred the lines between nightmare and reality. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. The outline shifted, a grotesque mockery of a child too tall and too thin, its skin stretched tight over bones. A smile, too wide and far too eager, split its face, revealing rows of jagged teeth that glimmered in the dim light. Run! Mark screamed, pulling at Sarah, desperation clawing his voice. But the oppressive shadows closed in, curling around them like a serpent poised to strike. Ethan froze, his hands slipping from Mia's grip. No, we can't leave, he cried, his voice rising higher with panic. What if we lose someone again? Every ounce of Sarah's instincts urged her to retreat, but something deeper held her rooted in place. Ethan, we can't stay, she shouted, her heart hammering against her ribcage. Stay and play. The figure cooed again, its voice dripping with malice. The halls darkened, swallowing the air. It took a step closer, and the shadows writhed, curling around the feet of the family, anchoring them to the ground. Marcus' mind raced. There had to be a way to break free. Mia, Ethan, listen to me. On my count, we run toward the light. No matter what. He squeezed Sarah's hand tighter, a silent promise that they would not let anything tear them apart. Okay, Mia whispered, her small voice trembling with fear. Focus on my voice, Mark urged. 1, 2, 3. With one strong pull, he yanked them forward. The shadows screamed, a cacophony that reverberated through their bones. They darted toward the flickering light, every step a battle against the chilling grip of the darkness that fought to reclaim them. Suddenly, the figure lunged, stretching its spindly arms, grasping toward Ethan. Join us. Playtime forever. It shrieked, laughter mingling with its cries, creating a haunting melody that echoed in the confined space. In a split second that felt like an eternity, Sarah swung around, pushing Ethan forward. Go. Now, she screamed, urgency punctuating her tone. The moment the children darted ahead, Mark felt the weight of their decision. He stayed back for a second, a primordial instinct coursing through him. Stay close, he bellowed as he held Sarah's gaze, willing her to follow. Then, with a yank, he tore himself away from her desperate eyes and sprinted, mirroring their movement towards the light, heart pounding, legs propelling him forward. Pain punctured every nerve, but adrenaline surged. He had to protect them. The warmth of the light beckoned, but the shadows retaliated violently, swarming in a torrent. Mark could feel their pressure, an icy chokehold around his heartbeat. They were closing in too fast. With a final ferocity, they stumbled into the light-filled doorway. The shadows withdrew with a hiss, leaving behind a thick, suffocating darkness. Mark glanced back just in time to see the figure slump, its form flickering as if caught between realms. "Don't stop," Sarah cried, dragging Ethan and Mia forward. The warmth enveloped them, bursting through the doorway, and they tumbled into what seemed like an unending corridor lined with smooth glass. But this warm reprieve was short-lived. The walls began to tremble, trembling as if they were mismatched pieces of a puzzle. Guided by some sinister force, they were being ushered deeper into a maze of shifting realities. "This isn't the way out," Mark shouted, eyes darting to find another egress. "We're being led into another trap." Suddenly, Mia's voice broke the chaos. "Look, there's another door." But before they could run through it, the corridor solidified at their backs, sealing them in. Now, they had nowhere to go. Dark tendrils snaked from the ceiling, and the figure's laughter echoed, hyped by the sound of hard-pounding footsteps that began to close in on them from behind. "What do you want?" Ethan yelled, small body trembling against his mother. The figure materialized at the opposite end of the corridor once more, eyes alight with unquenchable hunger. "I already told you I'll take your place." Would they be able to break free again, or would they succumb to whatever terror awaited them in that cursed place? As Mark's heart thudded, a chilling realization dawned upon him. The game was far from over. The suffocating darkness hung in the air like a thick fog, wrapping around them as the figure crept closer. Mark's heart raced, each beat echoing in his ears, drowning out the laughter that twisted around them like a noose. Behind him, Sarah stood paralyzed, her breath hitching as fear broke into her gaze. "Mia, hold on to Ethan," Mark shouted, forcing himself to stay strong. His voice was rough, as if he were scraping it against the grating atmosphere. The children clung to each other, wide eyes reflecting the chaos. "Do something," Mia whimpered, her pleading voice barely rising above the specter's echoing laughter. "Move," Sarah finally snapped, stepping toward Mark, a fierce determination igniting within her chest. "There has to be a way out." "What do we do?" Ethan cried, despair lacing his toned as if sensing the surge of resolve within Sarah. The figure lunged, the prickly hair on its body bristling with energy. "Playtime is just getting started," it shrieked, its voice rising, sharp and keen, like a blade cutting through flesh. Mark's adrenaline skyrocketed. He turned on his heel, pushing against the shadows, desperate to snatch a glimpse of the exit. But with each step, the walls began to close in. The glass corridor felt like a trap snapping shut. He could feel the fear radiating off his family, the panic suffocating them all. "Over there," Sarah shouted, pointing to a flickering light at the far end, barely visible through the writhing darkness. It shimmered, but with every fiber of Mark's being, he knew it was a false promise. He grasped Sarah's hand tighter, yanking the whole family toward the light, every muscle screaming for movement. "Move, move, move," Mark yelled, each word a fierce puncture against the thickening terror that loomed just behind. They pushed ahead, their bodies colliding with an unseen barrier. The laughter escalated, echoing through the corridor as the specter slunk back. "You can't run from me. I'll always be nearby," it taunted, weaving in and out of visibility, its voice wicked enough to send chills skittering down their spines. The air around them crackled, pulsating with a foreboding energy as the flickering light dimmed, threatening to plunge them back into the nightmarish void. Mark steeled himself, refusing to let the darkness win. "On three," he barked, vision narrowing to the light, woven with a desperate hope. 1, 2, 3. They surged forward, adrenaline fueling their movements. The instant they breached the boundary into the light, it exploded around them. But just as sudden, an unbearable pressure crashed against their bodies, shoving them back as the specter howled in fury. Join me forever," it shrieked, the shadows spilling forth from its form, thick as smoke. Mark fought against the force, clenching his fists. "We want to go. We are not yours," he shouted defiantly, the words spilling out like a burst dam. The light flickered wildly, trying to reject the encroaching darkness. But as the laughter crescendoed into a maddening cacophony, Mark felt the ground slip beneath him. The glass corridor began to warp, twisting and turning like it was alive, eager for the family to lose faith. Ethan's voice broke through. I can't hold on. Stay together, Sarah cried, pulling Ethan closer, her voice clean and sharp as a knife. Don't look back. Just keep moving. Mark could see it, then the figure's grotesque face, a smear of horror that sent a spear of ice through his veins. You can't run away from the truth. You're already mine. A primal instinct shot through him. Fight. It can't take you, not now. He roared, thrusting his body forward through the light that flickered desperately. But just as the corridor stretched again, twisting into an endless void, a familiar voice echoed, its tone soft, almost soothing amidst the chaos. Help me. Mark, the chill gripped him again, colder than the last. The whispers were back, tiny voices, too familiar. And as they swirled around him like the specter, a new dread settled in. Is that you, Leo? Mark gasped, heart plummeting. But just like that, the light seeped away, erasing any hint of hope. What do we do? Mia's voice quivered, and the uncertainty sliced through the air like glass. They were trapped. The end of the corridor sealed tight, leaving them with only their rapidly fading breaths as the figure's laughter crescendoed one last time. Something was coming, and it was not just the fear. The game was only just beginning. What had they stepped into? And worse, what awaited them in the darkness that had no end? The walls pulsed, a living entity pulling them into its depths. Mark's hands shook as he gripped Sarah's, but the darkness clawed at the edges of his resolve. Shadows danced, flickering just within view, teasing them mercilessly as they fought for breath. Mia, Mark shouted, panic rising. Are you okay? Yeah, I think. Her voice trembled, swallowed by the oppressive air. The sound of her heartbeat mixed with the specter's sinister laughter, creating an unsettling symphony of dread. Ethan? Sarah's voice broke, laced with desperation. I'm here. Ethan squeezed Mia's hand tighter, both kids on the verge of tears. We need to keep moving, Mark urged, forcing his legs to carry him, but every step felt like a mile. The corridor tightened, painful and claustrophobic. The specter's voice echoed, mocking and cruel. Running, are we? You think you can escape the inevitable? Mark gritted his teeth, the figure moving like dark water, slithering, twisting, and consuming all hope. They stumbled forward, the flickering light ahead becoming more distant, more surreal with every heartbeat. It felt like chasing a mirage. Look, the light. Sarah pointed, her spirit flickering like the glow itself. They surged forward again, hope igniting painfully in Mark's chest. Just as they reached for the light, a bone-chilling shriek reverberated through the corridor, freezing them all in place. The specter had sunk to the ground, its form twisting, elongating into shadows. Sharp fragments of its laughter echoed around them like the distant echo of a fire alarm. You're not just fighting me, it hissed, the words coiling around them like vines. You're fighting what you've buried. Remember? Mark's breath caught as memories surged, unbidden. Leo's laugh, his innocence, snatched away by an unseen hand. The guilt washed over him, dark and heavy. Was Leo somehow tied to this? No, Sarah cried, breaking the spell. He is not your plaything. He was a child. A flicker of power ignited in Mark, doused by the surrounding terror. We're not going to let you take anyone else. He spat out, rage bubbling forth, mixing with sadness. The figure wavered, its form shifting as if unsure of its own shape. You think your will can defeat what is already inside of you? Mark could feel the weight of his family, the shadows pressing down, clawing at their sanity. Together, he shouted, rallying everyone, desperate to forge a united front. We stay together. They functioned as one, a singular force spurred by determination. If they were to face the specter, they needed to confront their shared pain. They held on to each other, their bond pulsing stronger than the darkness surrounding them. Leo, Mark shouted towards the void. You're still with us. We're not leaving you behind. With that declaration, the flickering light surged brighter for a breathless second. But just as hope ignited, an overwhelming wave of darkness crashed over them, ready to drag them under. Join me in the abyss. The specter shrieked, its voice blending into the oppressive air. Suddenly, a sharp pain pierced Mark's chest, as if the shadows were reaching for his heart, squeezing it viciously. The laughter intensified, reverberating with his worst fears and hidden regrets. He could feel Sarah's panic, Mia's shivering fear, and Ethan's desperate cries. But in the depths of the chaos, a soft, familiar voice broke through. "Help me, Mark." It echoed again, and he recognized it instantly. Leo, his heartache-given voice. "No, not again." Mark's legs felt like lead, fighting against an unseen force, the burden heavy on his shoulders. But through the terror, something shifted deep within him. "I will not lose you, Leo." He lunged forward, pulling his family past the sprawl of darkness inching toward them, determination fueling him. "We fight back." At that instant, a jolt of energy coursed through Mark, igniting sparks of light in the abyss. But it raised new horrors too. The specter snarled, a twisted grin revealing rows of jagged teeth. "Then let the game begin." The laughter morphed, shifting into something more sinister, closer, wrapping around them like a shroud. The children flinched, fear thrumming in their veins. The light faltered, flickering like a dying star. Mark's heart pounded. Would this be their last stand? With breathless urgency, they took a step into the uncertain swirl of dark light, driven by a singular thought. Could they escape, or would they be enveloped by the game's horrifying endgame? The answer loomed just beyond the suffocating darkness, waiting to unveil itself when they least expected it. The air thickened, pressing down on them like a weight, suffocating the flicker of hope. Mark stumbled, pulling Sarah, Mia, and Ethan along, their breaths coming in frantic gasps. Each step felt like wading through tar, the shadows swirling, coiling around them like tendrils of despair. "Keep moving," Mark urged, his voice hoarse, fear igniting into urgency. Just ahead, the light shimmered alive, pulsating, a beacon against the overwhelming dark. "Wait," Ethan cried, his voice straining. "What if it's a trap?" His eyes darted, wild, as if expecting the specter to erupt from the shadows at any moment. "Better a trap than standing still." Mark shot back. They surged forward, pushing through the dread, determination overcoming the basest instincts of fear. But the darkness bellowed, echoing with mocking laughter. Futile, so very futile. It reverberated, clawing at their minds. Mark could feel its icy fingers trace along his spine, making him shiver. Memories haunted him like phantoms, taunting him with their weight. "Don't think about it," Sarah hissed, as if sensing his spiraling thoughts. "Just think about the light." "Almost there." Mark pushed them onward, the light flickering in and out of focus like a distant star threatened by an encroaching storm. His heart raced, pounding in rhythm with the cascading panic hovering over them. "Mark!" Mia shrieked, eyes wide, pointing. A form emerged from the dark, grotesque and shifting. Its smile was a twisted grin, full of malice, stretching impossibly wide as it advanced. "Run!" Mark barked, instinct overtaking caution. They broke into a sprint, fear propelling them, the solid wall of darkness surging behind like a beast unleashed. "Leo, we're coming," he shouted, hoping the mere invocation of his son's name might charm away the shadows. But in response, the laughter grew louder, a cacophony of cruel delight. The corridor twisted, warping the exit into a nightmarish landscape of walls that clawed inward, threatening to close around them. Mark could feel the panic surging among the kids, fear curling cold fingers around their throats. "Keep focused," Sarah shouted, her voice pushing against the tide of despair. With each stride, the world around them warped, shadows darting at the edges of their vision. "Mark, there's too much." Ethan gasped, tremors shaking his body. Behind them, the specter lunged forward, the shadows snapping like a pack of wild dogs, eager to feast. "I want to let it take you," Mark roared, desperation fueling his words. They stumbled and slipped through the darkness, feeling the walls bathe them in malice. Then, amid the chaos, a glimmer of light flared like a supernova. Mark's heart leaped. "We're almost there." Hope buzzed through him like electricity, but just as the opening loomed, a grating screech erupted from the specter. "You cannot escape. You belong to me." The walls started to close in, pulsating with the sound. Mark lunged with everything he had, skin crawling, heart thumping, urging his family toward the light. "Step forward now." They all surged together, hearts pounding as one. With a sudden crash, the barrier of darkness seemed to flicker, a tangible distortion, and in that split second, they exploded into the light. But as they emerged, The specter's final wail echoed behind them, a promise laced in malice. You may have escaped, for now. He is mine. They tumbled into a bright, empty space. Air spilled over them in waves, filling their lungs, yet the shadows hung ominously at the edges. They're gone, Ethan breathed, trembling with exhaustion and fear, relief mingling with confusion. Mark looked around, eyes wide with disbelief. Where are we? A chill shivered through him as the shadows morphed around them, solidifying into figures that whispered secrets in infernal tones, figures that echoed Leo's laughter, twisted and broken. This isn't over, Sarah whispered, eyes darting to the dark line edging their newfound sanctuary. What did we just step into? Mia murmured, clutching Ethan's hand tightly. In that moment, a truth crashed down. Escapes only led to more horrors. Mark's breath hitched as dim lights flickered once more. The specter's taunt reverberated in his mind. The game has only just begun, with dread lingering heavy in the air. They exchanged quick glances, knowing they had yet to confront the real nightmare hidden just out of reach. What awaited them next? The ground beneath the Thompsons trembled again as they stood in the brightly lit expanse, shadows clawing hungrily at the edges. Mark's heart surged with adrenaline and fear. What do we do now? He asked, voice strained, the words barely escaping his throat. Sarah clutched Ethan and Mia close, hugging them tightly. We find a way out. We must break this cycle, she resolved, determination sparking in her eyes, even while a heavy dread rooted her to the spot. The figures in the dark flickered closer, each flash revealing twisted faces echoing Leo's laughter, now warped and haunting. Mark felt a rush of anger, a desperate desire to protect his family. No more games, he shouted into the void. We're done being pawns. In response, the shadows stirred, melded together, and took on a new form. A larger figure emerged, its wretched eyes glowing ominously. But you chose to play it, hissed, the voice intertwining with the tormented whispers of lost souls. They could feel it pressing against their resolve, a weighty reminder of their shared trauma. Together, Sarah urged, her voice strong despite the icy dread wrapping around her heart. Remember what we came for. We came for each other. They formed a tight circle, hands clasped, fear intermingled with fierce love. Mark clenched his jaw. We picture Leo, he breathed. His laughter, his warmth. That's what we fight for. Memory crashed through him, a flash of an innocent smile, shining against the darkest moments of their lives, filled them with renewed purpose. Mia, think of your drawings, he encouraged. All those colors, the joy you put into them. Focus on that. Mia's eyes sparkled with tears, her small fingers tightening around Ethan's. And the games we played, the love, she added, her voice steady, rousing both her parents. Each of them began to chant, their voices weaving together a barrier against the chilling air around them. The dark figure shrank back, momentarily deterred by their united front. You think you can resist? It spat, yet there was a tremor in its voice, doubt creeping in. Together, we can break this, Sarah cried, infusing her voice with every ounce of hope. No more fear. We don't have to play your game. The shadows pulsed, angry, frustrated as they pressed in, eager to consume them. Leo, Mark shouted, feeling the raw power of their memories coalesce. You are still with us. Come back. With that invocation, a flicker of light erupted from deep inside them, illuminating the darkness. For a fleeting moment, they could see the silhouette of their beloved son amidst the chaotic shadows, the innocence shining through, battling the darkness. Help me, I'm still here, Leo's voice echoed back to them, pulling them closer, connecting them. Everything around them shook as a sharp gasp pierced the air. The darkness frayed around the edges like a thread unraveling. No, the figure shrieked, panicking. But it could do nothing against the warmth anchored within the Thompsons. They took another step forward, expanding their light with every beating heart that resonated together, forcefully pushing back against the encroaching dark. With anguished wails, the darkness began to dissolve, impermeable walls cracking, letting real light seep through. Join us, Leo's voice called louder, a magnetic pull drawing the figures of despair away as gold washed over everything. Fight for the love, Sarah shouted, remembering every hug, every smile. And with that, drums of remembrance echoed through the void, resonating like a symphony that melted the shadows into nothingness. Suddenly, the weight began to lift, walls crumbling under a blinding light strong enough to consume every trace of darkness that had tormented them. With a final pulse of energy, the light enveloped them entirely, the echoing laughter shattered by jubilation, rippling through like waves. Then silence. Mark blinked, the world reorienting around them. They stood on solid ground, in a tranquil park. Just ahead, a playground sparkled swings swaying gently in the breeze, laughter spilling sweetly from the mouths of children playing. "This it's like we've returned," Ethan murmured, glancing around, confusion blending with hope. "We made it," Mia squealed, a flash of joy breaking through the previous weight. But then Sarah's breath caught as she spotted a child at the swing's golden hair dancing in the sunlight, unmistakably familiar. "Leo," she cried, breaking into a run as he turned. They saw the same wide smile, unchanged, untouched by whatever darkness had threatened to consume them. Mark's heart soared, a tidal wave of relief flooding through him as they reached him. They embraced their son tightly, laughter bubbling forth, the warmth consuming every fear left lingering as the specters faded into non-existence. The Thompsons knew they had fought not just for themselves, but for the love binding them forever, defeating the darkness with light. "We'll never let go, and we'll never be apart again," Mark vowed, looking into the eyes of his family. With Leo back, they would cherish every second, loving fiercely, ensuring the shadows would never creep near again. Together, they would build colors of happiness anew, their lives now a canvas filled with joy and shared laughter. And so, they walked into the future, hand in hand, ready to embrace every moment knowing love was the strongest shield against any darkness. But remember, dear friends, the whispers of the past will always linger just beneath the surface. So, guard your hearts fiercely, hold your loved ones close, and never underestimate the bond of family. Now it's your turn. You need to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories that capture your imagination. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and keep the story going. And flood the comments with your reactions and theories about this conclusion. Your voice matters. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this mind-blowing ending. Let us keep the magic alive.